After leaving their home world of planet Sadala, the Saiyans take Planet Plant as their new home world. Many years of coexistence went on by, and the Saiyans and the Tuffles lived happily. But soon, a war began to wage for control of this world. The Saiyans are making large advancements in the war, pushing the Tuffles to the brink of defeat. However, this is not the end. A mysterious scientist fueled by rage has a scientific breakthrough that will change the tides of war forever. Will the Tuffles make their last stand against the Saiyans? Fate of the two races is decided now. Somewhere within the vastness of the North Galaxy lies an unassuming planet known as Planet Plant. Yet, despite its simple and gentle name, the planet was ravaged by the horrors of a war. A bloody conflict between two races, the Saiyans and the Tuffles, has turned its bright pink skies into a hellish red. Years ago, the Tuffles and another race known as the Plants were the only native inhabitants of the planet. However, this all changed when refugees from another world arrived beyond the stars. Their original planet damaged beyond repair by a senseless civil war, the Saiyans arrived on Planet Plant seeking refuge. The technologically advanced Tuffles were worried about the seemingly primitive and violent nature of the Saiyans, but the Plants were able to establish common ground between each other. While the Tuffles continued to live in massive advanced metropolises and the Plants in their simple villages, the Saiyans turned the deserts and caves into their home, and so, at least for a while, peace reigned across the land. The Tuffles didn't bother the Saiyans, and the Saiyans didn't bother the Tuffles. But even peace cannot last forever. The Saiyans grew resentful of their living conditions, and their urge for battle grew with each passing generation as the horrors of the Civil War were forgotten. Why should the Saiyans be forced to live in squalor? They were, after all, the strongest race in the universe. If it weren't for them keeping their cool, then surely this planet would be theirs already. The Tuffles were not saints either, however, as they saw the Saiyans as low-life savages. The Plants tried desperately to ease their relationships with their neighbors, but it was no use. The hostile tensions between the Tuffles and the Saiyans, which had previously been built up for many years, were about to reach a breaking point. And one day, it did. Around age 720, nearly 200 years since they arrived seeking refuge, the Saiyans launched a sudden yet brutal invasion. Led by the newly crowned King Vegeta III, this new monarch fanned the flames of war as he encouraged his people to gather together. The memories of their past erased by time, King Vegeta wanted to secure the world for his family and the rest of the Saiyans. Not only that, but the technology of the Tuffles would surely mean contact with other worlds and riches to come as they get taken over. Entire Tuffle cities were put under siege as the Tuffles were quickly overwhelmed by this attack of the Saiyans. No matter what weaponry, the Saiyans towered over the Tuffles in both stature and power. With their immense physical strength, the Saiyans overran the Tuffle cities in rapid succession. The Tuffles retook some with their warring tactics, but their victories were few and far between. There were incalculable casualties on both sides. Plants tried once again to end the madness, but they were swiftly ignored. With neither physical strength nor advanced intellect, the Plants were actually caught in the crossfire as their entire race was wiped out by the war. Each side blamed the other for the extinction of the Plants as the conflict only intensified through the years. The Saiyan-Tuffle War raged with both sides stuck in a deadlock. While King Vegeta and his soldiers remained active and planned out for when the moon would be out, the Tuffles prepared their best scientists tirelessly. There was one that worked alone, more than any other. His name was Dr. Lychee, the most brilliant Tuffle scientist. He had a cold and abrasive demeanor, and morally questionable experiments. Dr. Lychee was once a kind man who strived to better the lives of the Tuffles, but the horrors he witnessed during the beginning of the war broke something within him. He was consumed by hatred. Now his life goal was to destroy these Saiyans, no matter what he had to do. He had written off their attempts to make bigger guns as jokes, and a waste of time. Instead, Lychee would focus on closing the power gap between the Saiyans and the Tuffles themselves. At first, Lychee had an idea for a gas that would severely weaken anyone who inhaled it, yet he was afraid of unleashing such a dangerous weapon. As a result, Lychee shelved this project, and many others, until he was left with the most promising one. The doctor worked on a project named M2, a plan to create artificial life with incredible power. Living AI he would name Machine Mutants. They had undying loyalty to the Tuffles programmed within them. He toiled away at his lab until he created the first successful prototype. The power was astonishing, and its size immense, impressive intelligence, and of course, loyalty. Lychee would continue to create more and more machine mutants. These aren't as powerful as the ones from Dragon Ball GT, but they are extremely powerful. Lychee soon showed his creations to the King Tuffle. The king was skeptical at first, and a little afraid of these robots, but he made sure to alleviate his fears, after showing off their impressive power and strategic capabilities. Dr. Lychee proudly hailed his Sigma Force as the saviors. However, the Doctor was well aware what they were fighting against. Time itself. Even with the support and resources of the king, the Tuffles needed to attack quickly. One night, their plan came into motion. King Vegeta was overseeing the development of his soldiers when an explosion rocked the settlement. The king demands to know the meaning of this, as he sees something in the distance, but his stomach dropped once he realized what it was. A massive swarm of machine mutants, and under it, the Tuffle army. The Saiyans barely had time to react when they were immediately overwhelmed by the suffocating might of the machine mutants. Almost as if they were a swarm of locusts, they decimated everything in their wake. Despite all odds, the Saiyans were still formidable foes. There was one young Saiyan with spiky hair that led a group of low-class warriors, while another older Saiyan with a mustache rallied the middle-class Saiyans to defend their positions. Lychee smiled at the battle, telling the king that he had finally defeated the Saiyan army. Even so, King Tuffle was a little worried about how bloodthirsty Dr. Lychee was. But before he could speak up, something was eclipsed by the moonlight. Lychee turned to see the horror of several giant monkeys growing and stomping, shaking the world. Even from afar, he could see it all. The Tuffles and even some of the machine mutants felt a cold chill down their spine. However, Dr. Lychee's will was absolute. He was now more convinced than ever that the Saiyans were monsters that needed to be exterminated. While the king was frozen in fear, Lychee screamed out orders to finish them off. Despite the seeming lack of effect from the Tuffle attack, Lychee was relentless. Their enemies must have a weak spot. Eventually, through luck, one of the Mini-Osaurus tails was blasted off as the Saiyan reverted back into his base form. Lychee quickly realized this fatal flaw and ordered all of his soldiers and machines to aim at their tails. King Vegeta, one of the few Saiyans capable of controlling his great ape state, attempted to command his troops to group up and defend themselves, but it was no use. Because most of the Ozaru were mindlessly rampaging, they weren't able to realize what the Tuffle were doing. One by one, the Ozaru fell, their tails slashed off and reverted back into normal beings. Without their transformation, the Saiyans were quickly overrun by the Tuffle forces. Their caves destroyed, their food supplies raided, and their homes razed to the ground. The Saiyans wanted to die fighting, as did their king, but Paragus knew better. He could see the death of his people incoming, and pleaded with the king to give up his horrendous bloodshed and live to fight another day. King Vegeta slapped Paragus away for his insolence, but he saw one after another of the Ozaru fall. He realized that they were done for. With a heavy heart, King Vegeta ordered his forces to retreat. He knew many Saiyans would hate him for this, so he made them a promise. They would return stronger than ever, not to take over the world, but to kill every single Tuffle. The Saiyans cheered, even in this defeat. Their fates were in the hands of the Tuffles now. But what would they do to them? Many Tuffles, especially Lychee, wanted to eradicate the Saiyans while they had a chance. But even more Tuffles, such as the king, didn't want to commit genocide. King Tuffle ultimately banned the Saiyans from the world. Using their resources, the Tuffles fixed ancient spaceships for the Saiyans to travel and leave Planet Plant forever. They would be allowed to live, but only if they never returned. With their homes destroyed, supplies depleted, and no hope left, the Saiyans were forced to take a deal. King Vegeta did promise, however, to take back what's rightfully theirs. Their grudge against the Tuffles will only fuel them to become even stronger. They promised to one day make a plan to eradicate the Tuffles. The Saiyans enter their spaceships, heading off into the unknown vastness of the universe. However, Lychee was dissatisfied by this fate. In secret, he would continue developing his machines to one day rid the universe of those demons. The Saiyans venture from planet to planet as mere pirates, ransacking and pillaging them. But they encounter someone unexpected, a young alien named Frieza who ruled over one outpost they tried to take over. He was there under the command of his father and made quick work of the monkeys despite his young age. Still, Frieza recognized their power and spared their lives under one condition: working for him. The Saiyans agreed, as long as they would get to live somewhere. In no time flat, they had impressed King Cold with their abilities to take over planets, so much so that they were giving one of them. It wasn't the nicest planet, nothing like Plant, but it would do. It was named Planet Vegeta after the king. Frieza was praised for his acquisition of the Saiyans, and shortly after, the Cold Force was renamed to the Frieza Force. As the Saiyans continued to conquer planets, the Frieza Force continued to grow and expand its influence. It was only a matter of time until King Vegeta would receive a request that he had been waiting for a long time: make contact with the Tuffles. With zero hesitation, King Vegeta sent his son and his squad, along with a platoon of soldiers led by Zarbon and Dodoria, to Planet Plant. Life had changed in Plant, as reconstruction efforts expanded their empire and integrated the machine mutants into their society. Still, that all changed that fateful day as a shadow was cast over the castle. The Frieza Force had arrived, demanding an audience with the king. Zarbon and Dodoria, alongside their Saiyan soldiers, are escorted to the throne room, where the king is waiting alongside Lychee. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the Saiyans step in. Zarbon and Dodoria greeted the apprehensive king, offering gifts in the form of their scouter technology. They had heard many interesting things about the Tuffles from the Saiyans, and their lord was intrigued and eager to create a mutual beneficial alliance in exchange for the Tuffle tech. The Frieza Force would defend Planet Plant from any future attacks. However, before the king could even think of a response, Lychee immediately refused. This Lord Frieza had allied themselves with the Saiyans and could not be trusted. Dodoria threatens to kill the old man in order to set an example, but King Tuffle rises up, ordering his guards and the machine mutants to kindly escort the guests out of the castle. Anyone that was close with the Saiyans were enemies to the Tuffles. Zarbon ordered his soldiers to attack, leading to a massive battle inside the royal castle. Unfortunately for the invaders, a swarm of machine mutants descended upon the area and started to overwhelm them. Even Vegeta, who wanted to show these pitiful Tuffles his true power, was starting to struggle against the machines. The Saiyans and Dodoria wanted to continue the assault, but Zarbon hastily ordered the tactical retreat. They got the answer they were coming for. They didn't need to risk their lives. Despite Prince Vegeta's disapproval, the Frieza Force retreated from Planet Plant. Yet this wouldn't be the end. For the next several years, more Frieza Force raids would routinely strike the Tuffle homeworld. While the machine mutants acted like a suit of armor around the world, defending it every time, the constant attacks proved a toll on the mental health of the Tuffle people. King Tuffle himself became incredibly paranoid as time went on, terrified at the thought of Frieza and the Saiyans returning one day. Dr. Lychee took it upon himself to upgrade the machine mutants, but more than that, he wanted to create a fail-safe plan in the event that anything happened to their people. Dr. Lychee, as the head of this project, created blueprints for the most highly advanced machine mutants, a parasitic organism that could adapt to any environment it found itself in, created from the DNA of the Tuffle King itself. Its codename Baby, the first of its kind. If it all went according to plan, then this would be the Tuffles' insurance, their ticket to surpassing death. However, Lychee was never a huge fan of this plan. He thought it would be simpler to just kill every single Saiyan and get it over with. He continued to research a way to prevent those Saiyans from transforming into giant monsters. But he wouldn't stop there. He retrieved his old scrapped plans, the Deathstrong Gas, and continued to work on it diligently. A more potent, more painful way to use it. If anyone deserved it, it was those Saiyans and Frieza. Frieza was becoming more and more frustrated. The Tuffles and the Saiyans were proving to be problematic. Whispers of a Saiyan legend came to his ears. Something about a Super Saiyan and a Super Saiyan God. And soon he was thinking of how he could get rid of the Saiyans. When he received orders from the God of Destruction Beerus about eliminating the Saiyans, Frieza finally decided this was his ticket out of dealing with them. Perhaps he could take out two birds with one stone, however. Those Tuffles were imbeciles. He gave them a chance to live peacefully as long as they provided their tech. They refused. Now they were just pests. Just like in canon, Frieza sends an order for the entire Saiyan race to regroup in their home planet. As the Saiyans start to converge, one of them, named Bardock, is worried that these orders could simply be a farce to eliminate them all. So him and his wife Gine steal a space spot for their youngest son, Kakarot, to be sent to an off-world planet. However, Bardock is shocked when he and the rest of the Saiyans actually do receive new orders. Eliminate the Tuffles and claim Planet Plant for Lord Frieza. Nearly every single Saiyan was excited at this plan. They could finally get the revenge they deserved. But Bardock remained suspicious. He could remember the power of the Tuffles robots. He didn't believe that the Saiyans were capable of defeating those machines, even after all this time. What was Frieza planning? Gine wonders if they were hasty in sending away Kakarot, but Bardock reassures her that this was the right choice. If they survive this invasion, they'll pick up Kakarot right away anyways. King Vegeta organized his forces with great zeal, and in record time, the entire Saiyan race was equipped and ready. The king gave his speech, reminding people of the suffering and humiliation they suffered since the loss against the Tuffles so many years ago. This was the chance to reclaim their glory, their planet, and their honor. It was time for war. Everyone erupted in cheers. It was a sunny day for the Tuffles, eating at restaurants, traveling to work, living their simple lives, when once again, the shadow of the Frieza Force overcast itself on the city. Dr. Lychee takes off his goggles as he was working on another invention, looking up at the sky and cursing as he watched hundreds of soldiers step out of the ship. At first, he thought it was just simple Frieza Force once again. He didn't expect to see every single Saiyan there. King Vegeta orders every single soldier to attack and reclaim their home. In a single motion, the king fires a ki blast that destroys an entire city. The second Saiyan Tuffle War had begun. The Tuffle King wasted no time in mobilizing the machine mutants. And although the Tuffles did have more advanced tech and weapons than before, the Saiyans were stronger and had better technology too. Their scouters were invaluable in detecting where Tuffles were hiding. They had spent the last few decades conquering planets and fighting powerful opponents. Bardock led his squad into the capital city, destroying tanks and machines along their way. But he noticed the faces of the scared Tuffles and civilians, staring at them in horror. Children crying in fear in particular. Bardock cursed under his breath. He hated having to do this after just sending Kakarot away and helping that one other kid in Planet Cereal. Gine, who was part of the invading force, placed her hand on Bardock's shoulder. She knew exactly what he was thinking. They just wanted to leave this place now. Bardock nods and orders his squad to stop firing at civilians. They just need to get rid of the soldiers. Shugesh yells at Bardock, saying that he's insane. They're gonna get in trouble if they do something like that. But that's when they're shot down by a group of powerful machine mutants. The machines strike a pose, announcing themselves as the Sigma Force. Their leader, Nezzy, orders the Saiyans to stand down and accept their defeat, but Bardock spits at the ground. They wouldn't lose to another piece of scrap metal again, especially to ones with ridiculous poses like that. The Sigma Force and the Bardock squad clash overhead. Meanwhile, King Vegeta overlooks the city as he surveys the progress. There were already heavy losses on both sides. The machine mutants clearly have gotten more strong over the years. But King Vegeta didn't care. He had a trump card. A technique he and his elites had developed since their exile. After all, why should they wait another 100 years for a moon to rise when they can create their own? The monarch created a power ball in the palm of his hand, shooting it up at the sky, bursting and mixing. The artificial moon was created, and soon rose the Ozaru once more. But Lychee had anticipated this. From within his lab and underneath the castle, Lychee, who had been observing the war from the monitors, instructed the rest of the scientists to activate the Blood's Wave's dampeners. In only a few moments, a dome barrier of light was erected through the city, trapping the Saiyans within the capital. A pulsating glow began to emit from the barrier as the Saiyans, who were in the middle of transforming, were suddenly cut off from the rays of the artificial moon. Suddenly, and painfully, the Saiyans were forced to revert back into their normal forms. They couldn't believe it. Those infuriating Tuffles had figured out a way to counter their greatest asset. King Tuffle, who was watching the events unfold, yelled out in jubilation. Yet, this wasn't the end. Lychee approached his massive supercomputer and without hesitation activated his trump card. Some scientists even called him insane as 4 machines rose through the city and the beacon shone on top of the castle. The machines and the beacon activated all at once, a flood of Deathstrong Gas spreading through the city as the Saiyans start to cough and feel weak. In contrast, the Tuffles were experiencing waves of anger and loathing as the supercomputers sent out a signal designed to amplify their hatred, their eyes widening out as their aggression levels rose. The two-pronged plan worked, with the Saiyans greatly weakened as the Tuffles were empowered. Lychee was condemned by the other scientists and even King Tuffle himself. The Deathstrong Gas and the machine mutants would surely hurt their own soldiers and civilians, or even worse, kill them. Yet their criticisms fell on deaf ears. Lychee was prepared for whatever fate awaited him once this war was over. It didn't matter what had to be sacrificed, as long as the Saiyans were killed. Back on the battlefield, Bardock and his squad were struggling to defend themselves against the Sigma Force. With their Ozaru transformation interrupted and poisoned from the Deathstrong Gas, they were nearing even closer to death's door. Their scouters malfunctioning, leaving them in the dark and grasping for what the Tuffles could have possibly done to their tech and their comrades. The machine mutants, unaffected by the gas, continued their oppressive assault. Bardock knew that as long as this gas remained in the air, the Saiyans would surely perish. Bardock yelled at his teammates to scatter and find whatever is creating the gas. The team spreads out as the Sigma Force chases after them, unwilling to let them escape. The squad flies across the city until finally they spot 4 of the gas machines. Unfortunately, various members of the Sigma Force and other bio-warriors awaited them. A massive battle breaks out in the war zone as the Bardock squad struggles to overwhelm them. During Bardock's battles against Nezzy, he managed to punch the robot straight into one of the Deathstrong Gas machines and blast them away with a riot javelin. It exploded in a spectacular fashion as Bardock sees various wires and an immense pipe leading downwards. Following his gut feeling, Bardock enters the pipe in hopes of discovering the source of the gas, covering his face as to not breathe it in. Bardock eventually emerges inside a chrome laboratory where he finds a massive computer surrounded by scientists. For the first time in what felt like forever, he breathed a mouthful of clean air. With a smirk, Bardock demolished the roof of the lab where he finds himself face to face with the terrified King Tuffle and the defiant Lychee. Bardock shouts at the Tuffles, demanding that they shut off their gas immediately. Lychee refuses to listen to the Saiyan, clicking a button on his console as an entire legion of machine mutants surge into the laboratory. As Bardock fights off the machines and the scientists attempt to flee for their lives, several more explosions rock the entire city. From up above, a hole is blasted open as King Vegeta leads the remaining Bardock squad members and other soldiers into the lab. They had destroyed the rest of the Deathstrong Gas machines and followed the pipe straight here, just like Bardock had done. King Vegeta greets King Tuffle, remarking that he was eager to kill him personally. However, the machine mutants rose to defend their master. Even the rest of the Sigma Force returned to the lab, called forth by Nezzy as they activated their ultimate combiner protocol. The Sigma Force merged, creating the Super Mega Cannon Sigma. The Saiyans and Lychee himself groaned in embarrassment as the new robot announces its name and poses once more. However, despite its ridiculous name, this machine was by far the strongest of its kind. The lab began to crumble and fall apart from the ferocious brawl. The battle was intense, with only Bardock and Lychee noticing that several alarms were blaring within the collapsing lab. Lychee peered over to his supercomputer as his mouth dropped. Even Bardock couldn't believe what he was seeing. From the monitors, there was an alert of what appeared to be an incoming meteorite heading straight for Planet Plant. But according to the visuals provided by the machine mutants outside, this wasn't a meteor. It was a massive supernova, and behind it all was none other than the cackling Frieza. Both the Doctor and Bardock realized at the same time that they had been duped. This was Frieza's plan all along, to take advantage of the bad blood between the Saiyans and the Tuffles to pit them against each other. And once they were busy play fighting, he'd finish them both off in one fell swoop. Despite their disdain for each other, Lychee and Bardock stopped what they were doing and attempted to stop their allies from fighting. They were on the verge of being extinguished. They needed to escape. Yet, their desperate pleas were ignored. Guinea was the only one who listened. The Saiyans, the Tuffles, their machine mutants, their hatred for each other was so deep and entrenched that no mere words could possibly convince them to stop. At that moment, both Bardock and Lychee realized that they were doomed. Bardock yelled at Lychee, asking if there was anything they could possibly do, but Lychee fell to the floor. He had nothing. There was no way to save his people, except perhaps one way. Lychee scrambled all over his supercomputer, typing in various commands as he ordered Bardock to protect him at all costs. He despised having to resort to allying himself with a Saiyan. If the circumstances were different, he'd rather die than working with a Saiyan. But this wasn't about him anymore. This was about preserving the legacy of the Tuffles. Bardock nodded, jumping in to stop any stray blast or enraged Saiyan soldiers from approaching the Doctor. Guinea appeared beside him, trying her best to help. Far away, King Tuffle had narrowly avoided the grasp of King Vegeta, who was smashed into the ground by the combined might of the Sigma Force. Overcome with immense fear, King Tuffle ordered his own scientists to prepare the neutral transfer. He was going to preserve himself within the prototype and save his life no matter what. As the enormous supernova started to inch closer and closer to the planet's surface, Lychee and King Tuffle made their final gambits. Lychee activated his Doomsday Protocol for his supercomputer as emerald green lights engulf the laboratory. Purple miasma oozes from Lychee, Bardock, and every other being within the planet.
Yes, go on, my Hachiak. Drink our hatred. Let the rage, fear, and loathing of the Tuffles empower you. Survive, Hachiak, so that you may carry on our revenge.
The pod containing Hachiak blasted off into space, while another similar pod was sent rocketing from the lab as well. Lychee didn't know what the other ship was, but it didn't matter anymore. The supernova was clearly visible from the hole in the ceiling. Their end was nigh. Bardock continued fighting until the very end, protecting Guinea, the doctor, and everyone else with all his might. Guinea cried out for Bardock as he held on to her hand, screaming that he would never let her go. In a final act, Bardock and Guinea pulled back their arms, firing a twin blast at the supernova, but they both knew it was useless. For a fleeting moment, before being disintegrated, Lychee felt a small twinge of respect for the Saiyans. He regretted not asking that man's name. As the energy of the supernova consumed the planet and its inhabitants, Bardock could only think about his squad, Guinea and his sons, Raditz and Kakarot. He hoped beyond all hope that his sons would survive and live proper lives. But beyond that, he felt an unyielding surge of hatred towards Frieza. In an instant, Planet Plant was destroyed. The Saiyans and the Tuffles, two entire civilizations of fighters, people, scientists, and dreamers, were erased from existence. As Frieza continued to laugh in glee, he noticed a spacecraft heading towards him. Believing that it may contain a survivor, he fires a death beam at it, as the spacecraft explodes. But from the wreckage of the craft, a grey mass of goo flies straight onto him. Frieza stumbles a bit, remaining motionless in the vacuum of space for a moment before re-entering the mothership. Zarbon approaches his master, asking if everything is alright. He seemed rather pale. Zarbon pointed out at a scratch on his face. Frieza touched it lightly. It must have been a stray blast from the Saiyans that actually hit him, though Zarbon noticed a silver glow within it for a split second. Frieza simply laughs, looking up at Zarbon as the lieutenant gasps at what he sees. Frieza's eyes had changed, and massive lines extended across his face.
Why, I'm absolutely fine, Zarbon. Don't mind me. Now, let us get away from this wretched place. There's nothing left for me here. All that's left is to... what was it again? Oh yes. Conquer the universe.
Light years away, another ship glides through the darkness. Within the ship lies the supercomputer Hachiak, but it wasn't alone. The machine spins and whirls, creating two capsules and ejecting them, as two gas clouds emerge from it, forming two familiar beings, made out of pure hatred, Dr. Lychee and Bardock.
It appears that my plan worked. Hachiak was successful in extracting our hatred and absorbing it. Though our original bodies died, our grudges have not.
So what do we do now, old man? I have a burning desire to tear that monster Frieza apart.
As do I, my simian companion. My hate towards your people, while justified, only blinded me to the real threat. Our people were eliminated by a single man. It is our duty to carry their struggle on our shoulders. Let us wait for Hachiak to finish processing its data and create more ghostly warriors. Then, when we're ready, we'll kill Frieza.
Heh, that sounds like a plan I can get behind. You know what? I never got your name, old man. Name's Bardock. What's yours?
Dr. Lychee. In life, the Tuffles and the Saiyans were mortal enemies, but in death, may we partner in vengeance. I look forward to working with you, Bardock.
Thus, Hachiyak, the supercomputer, and the ghostly warriors of Bardock and Dr. Lychee, similarly to plan to eradicate the Saiyans, have been reborn, ready to take revenge on their worst enemy. But as Baby, the child of the Tuffles, flies across the universe in Frieza's mothership, another kid, Kakarot, the child of destiny and the Saiyans, travels to Earth, beginning the greatest adventure the universe has ever seen. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed What If the Tuffles Won the War. Though I saw this as a one-shot, I can't foresee it being a series. So if you'd like to see more, let me know in the comments down below. And a huge thank you to Xanos, the top tier Patreon who requested this one. It sure was a challenge, but it was really fun to make. Perhaps even something like What If Goku Was Raised by the Tuffles could be fun to do in the future. And a huge thank you to Professor Chimp for helping me write this story, and Raghmane for helping me edit it. Either way, let me know in the comments down below what you think, and be sure to share this video with your friends who like Dragon Ball. As always, a huge thank you to the patrons and members of the channel: Kaiden, Hue, Beastman420, Faisal Alsharef, Akko, Grim Shadow 227, Giovanni Jimenez, Zanos, D-Man for Life, Heard Fanfiction, Blaze9526, Crazed PlayStation CK, Free Flow Highway, Jackie effing Chan, Mystic Angel, Shenke, Angel MR, True Lightning Striker, Ghost 1571, Lee Urquidez, Kaiser Jirachi, Jonas Paulus, D-Man Plays, Jim G, Always Zero, Jerome Foster, Salil Paranjape, Keith Grimes, The Legendary Warrior, Samuel Randall, Dr. Devious YT, Christian Hellman, Pop Just, Tinshan Smith King, Francis Ford, Kiwi Famad 217, Louis Perkis, James Bracebridge, Nuka Draco, Hannah Rowan, Mutassim Muhammad, Ryuzaki, Midnight Combatant, and Jonathan Way. And that's everything. Thanks for watching, guys. Until we meet again. See ya.